All right, so we're live. This is conversation number 12 of our 19 conversation series. Welcome to PJ and the Beard. And today we have with us, you might remember from the interview we did earlier, Drew Swindle from Swindler Effects. Welcome to PJ and the Beard. How you doing, Drew?
Good, man. Just hanging out.
Cool. So what we've been doing, Drew, is just getting together and having like kind of a conversation with the people that pop in. I see Brian Landreth has already popped in on the chat. Drew, if you look at the upper, one of the nice things about using your computer, if you look at the upper right, it will say live chat, live comments.
Yeah, I got them.
And then you can click on that, and as comments come in, people are typically about 10 seconds behind us. There's that little pause between us sending it out and YouTube showing it.
Yeah.
All right, so what's Brian up to? He's rolling fretboard edges and dressing fret ends. Miserable, tedious work. Yes, it is. That's why I pay somebody to
Exactly. Right.
So, two things that we've been doing in these shows. We've been doing like kind of the clip of the day and then also doing the pedal of the day. And obviously, I think we know where the pedal of the day is coming from today. Zal from Brazil just popped in. What's up? And Layla's Guitar Daddy just popped in. Brody Hutchins just popped in. Brody's a friend of Pat's from out in Nashville. Where are you at again, Drew?
Alabama.
Birmingham, Alabama.
That's right. I knew that. So, while we're waiting for people to get in and ask a question, I think, Pat, you're right. Maybe we do just play that clip really quick because we're just constantly looking at stuff. So, Pat, this is you again.
Yeah, so we've been trying to feature some guitar player every day, whether it be someone Jason knows about that maybe I don't, or vice versa, or somebody interesting that we've stumbled across. And yesterday was Bill Withers, not an under-the-radar player, right? So we featured maybe an unknown clip of him. But, in all this time when we're trying to occupy time, which is why we're all together today, you're surfing the internet a little bit more. And I came across on Instagram Dakota's Cool Guitars. He was featuring two of Billy Joel Armstrong's Les Paul Jr.'s. And so as I'm scrolling through his page, he's got a clip of a guy, Nathaniel Murphy, playing on one of his clips, which led me to his Instagram page. This guy is unbelievable. From Iceland, grew up in England, moved to Chicago when he was 13, and really unique style. And so Jason's going to pick one here, but you can go check out his Instagram page.
So I'll put a link to his Instagram. Not that we want you necessarily to bail out on us and go.
Right, yeah, that's right. Go on that rabbit trail later. You got something to do right now.
But you can open that another window for later. This one was. I mean, there's so many cool ones here. This is one Pat sent me that was really cool. We'll play that. I'll turn my mic. And Pat, you had mentioned he had a B-bender, but he has more than a B-bender going on there.
Well, he has a B-bender on a Paisley Telly. I'm not sure what all he's doing there. He's got it detuned, obviously, and
there's three levers on the back of that guitar.
Okay. Yep.
Anybody else catch that?
I was too busy watching both of his hands because he hits him with his palm, probably, right?
Right.
Yeah.
He was working three different levers with the palm of his hand as he was doing that. That's crazy stuff.
So Nathaniel Murphy.
All right. So Drew.
Yes.
You want the pedal of the day?
Sure. Am I picking the pedal?
You can.
Yeah, let's do breadboard of the day and see what you're working on.
Well,
I'm just kidding. Whatever you want to say.
I've got that one that I showed before. I got this big guy. I don't drop it and break it. It's kind of bare, but it's because I need a lot of space for what's potentially coming. But just kind of experimenting with that phaser idea. I guess I got these two right here I've been working on. They're not new by any means, but you know, you've seen these guys, the Red Mountain and the Gulf. I've actually been working on, what I've been working on the most actually lately is some like firmware updates. Over the past couple months or maybe a little bit longer, I've been getting a couple of kind of suggestions. There you go. You got them. A couple of little suggestions that people have been asking about, some potential feature additions that I've been trying to rack my brain on how to really squeeze them in there in a way that makes sense, you know, in a way that's a little easy accessible. So I've got some stuff like both of them. I'm looking at adding a momentary bypass option, so it's not just on or off. You can hold it to have it on for however long you're holding it. Adding Midi Clock. That's something that wasn't in the original implementation. The Red Mountain will have some additional like stutter options rather than just a straight up kill switch. It'll kind of do some different things with the toggle switch. So yeah, I've been working on those mainly.
All right, so I got a question.
Yeah.
Midi Clock.
Yes.
You say it's not in those?
Not as of right now. Not in the version you should be running, the firmware you have.
So on the Red Mountain, I do run out of that little disaster area clock into it, and it sets the tempo, right?
You're probably
That's not Midi Clock. Is that what?
No, you're running it into the like external tap jack,
Okay.
which is like it's basically just simulating a switch press. It's not setting the tempo over MIDI necessarily. It's more like just remote switch press is what the disaster clock is doing.
Okay. And so on the back of the Golf, one of those inputs would be MIDI?
Yes. Yeah, one of them is your external tap that you've been using, and then one of them is an expression that can be set up to do kind of a lot of different things, but one of which is MIDI, yes.
Okay. And that, I think the Golf we have has that functionality, but maybe not the Red Mountain.
They're both the same as far as those external jacks go. And they have the same sort of implementation.
Okay. Because I know our Red Mountain's a little bit is a version 1, right?
Oh yeah, your Red Mountain is a 1. So that one does not have MIDI. No, there's no way for it to do MIDI. It is just bare bones external tap, and then just an expression / preset external control. So
now,
yeah,
sound-wise, how much different would that be the version 2?
Say what?
Sound-wise, would it be pretty much the same as version 2?
They are pretty close. Yeah. As if you're just going for like a good sounding tremolo, you're not going to gain too much extra with the V2 over the V1. You do get the harmonic mode in V2, which is a total different reworking of how the tremolo works. But their bare bones bass sound are going to be pretty much the same because it's a very similar. I had to change it a little bit to put the harmonic mode in there, but it's pretty much, they're very similar outside of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the comments, I saw Silver X Blade X jumped in, said hello to you. Thanks for joining us. So just in case people aren't real familiar with Swindler Effects, maybe what we ought to do quick is just, if you give me half a second here to figure out all the tabs that are on my computer screen right now. I want to pull up your store real quick and just super quickly here. Drew's already mentioned the Golf, which is his chorus pedal. And by the way, I like the limited edition one. The Workers' Comp is his compression pedal. Mm-hmm. The Iron Drive is overdrive. Go figure. Magic City is a delay pedal. Mine Shaft is a reverb pedal. Red Mountain's tremolo, and then the Nexus 4, which coming soon.
Yes.
Right.
Here it is.
And so the Nexus 4 is a loop switcher. So you can switch a programmable loop switcher. You can run it either live where you have each button to a pedal, or you can program it to turn various pedals on. I think you have what, 4?
Yeah,
Nexus
4 loops.
All right,
Yeah,
so just giving people an idea of what kind of stuff that you're doing out there. One of the things that and one of the reasons we got kind of found out about Drew, and I bought the first pedal I bought from him and stuff like that, is he has like really genius controls, over the pedal. So there's some really great ways, innovative ways to control it. We can get into that. In the chat, Brian Landreth asks, can you explain the difference between harmonic versus typical tremolo? So that would be a great first question for you.
Sure. So typical tremolo, your entire guitar signal is modulating, or the volume is changing together. Like your entire signal is either getting louder or softer, or louder or softer. Typically, that's kind of your standard tremolo. And there's a bunch of different waveforms that can do that at sine, triangle, square, and all that. But harmonic actually splits your signal into high frequencies and low frequencies. And those high and low frequencies then modulate at some opposite phase. So typically what will happen is you'll hear high frequencies, and then you'll hear low frequencies, and then high again. And that crossover of when they're kind of in between gives this weird kind of phase type, vibrato type, chorusy type sound, while those frequencies are kind of coming in and out. This is the best way I would explain it. There's a couple of different implementations, but that's kind of your basics.
Is it almost Univibe-ish?
My understanding is Univibe is a little bit, yeah, because my understanding is Univibe is a bit of a phaser implementation, and a phaser is basically a filter, a frequency filter that is going back and forth. So it is kind of giving that frequency change more than just a volume change. So there's so much crossover kind of in the general sounds of chorus, vibrato, phaser, Univibe. There's a lot of those that sound similar. It's just kind of the topology is what kind of dictates that, what it's actually classified as.
Hi to Kristen in the chat. She just joined. I think I saw subscribe. So thank you very much for that, Kristen. We appreciate it. That's awesome. Yeah. Other questions? I don't see any other questions in the chat. I mean, you guys, we have Drew for a little bit here. If you have questions, Drew, Pat, what are you thinking? Maybe.
Well, I was thinking, first of all, thanks for that explanation of harmonic tremolo, because we are going to be launching into a tremolo series like we did with the Leslie series, and that's a question we've asked a couple times. So your explanation is going to be helpful. We'll probably have to use it as a reference at some point, because it does sound very different.
Yeah,
you don't have that complete volume loss in back. There's always something.
Yeah,
a chorusy effect.
It feels a little bit less extreme because, you don't have total drops and total peaks. You always have something in the mix.
Right.
Just depends on which frequency range.
Good.
Yeah, we did. I know. I think last time we talked about the Nexus and how it was on its way. This is actually the first production version of the Nexus that I've yet to verify, but hopefully it all works. And we can would have started production on them earlier if I verified it, but everything's kind of been put on a weird hold. So.
Well, do you want to talk about that for a couple minutes? Because part of why we're doing this is to check in with friends and people we've met through the channel, and especially people that I know this isn't your sole livelihood. You have another job, but you're able to work from home. You were sharing, but what impact is our current situation having on the pedal building part of it?
So on the pedal building side, it's interesting. I was talking to some people in kind of a chat before or earlier this week, and there's a couple of different aspects of that. So with the economy, it's actually kind of interesting because there's a thought process that makes sense, but I never really thought about it. The people were saying that amp and guitar sales may struggle a little bit, those higher end, more expensive purchases, because people are a little more worried about saving and not spending a lot of money. But pedals are kind of in a weird spot where they're cheap and people can get their gear fix and their inspiration fix without feeling like they're spending a lot of money. So like people, I'm not really familiar with this, but people in past kind of recessions said that pedals still continue to do fairly well in the gear market because that was kind of people's outlet. And I've actually kind of seen that. Like our sales were really low for a while, pretty slow, especially at the beginning of this year and kind of end of last year, I guess. And last week was like really busy. Like we're super small, but like I had something in the mail like every day going out at least, which was abnormal. So I don't know if that trend will continue or not, but on the other side of things, like people are having a lot of issues with supply, like parts coming out of overseas countries and stuff like that. And I haven't had to like reorder a ton of things yet, so I haven't run into too many things. There are a couple of kind of notorious shops that people buy a lot of parts from that have kind of like shut down temporarily, and I know a lot of people are scrambling to like more specialized pieces, like the particular knobs they're using and that kind of stuff. They like can't get them right now. I actually haven't really touched base. The company does all of our circuit boards and stuff out of Kentucky. I haven't really touched base with them since everything really hit, so I don't actually know if I haven't seen an email from them if they're still working or not that I remember. So I've got for my stuff, I've got a good backlog of stuff that's already here that I could work through. But for me, it'll depend on how much longer it goes before it affects me really.
Right.
But yeah, it's tough. It's just a weird time.
Question from the chat: do you make anything in the shimmer arena?
No, I do not. Not yet. I have plans in the future of so our reverb pedal that we have right now is it's very basic and it's a great sounding reverb, but it's kind of dated now, especially with the direction we've gone in some of our more complicated stuff. So I have plans. I'm working with a guy who's wanting to come and kind of help the Swindler stuff, who used to kind of do his own pedal company, and he developed a reverb that has a room, hall, and shimmer mode that is DSP based that we're looking at incorporating and trying to kind of make a better tricked out mine shaft along the lines of the Red Mountain and the Gulf, tricked out with all those features and having those different modes. So I would love to, yes, but no, not right now.
Cool.
Another question in the chat: will there be a stereo in and out in the Golf in the future?
Man. So I don't know why. I guess it's because I'm one of the, I hate to say one of the few, but one of the few companies that does a stereo chorus, especially in that size. But I've been getting this question like more and more often, and it's starting to make me question my original answer. But my original answer is no. I cannot do it. The chorus circuitry is so parts heavy and involved, and it's so expensive and so much packed in there. To do a stereo in would basically require doubling that. So that if I did it, there's absolutely no way it would be in the same enclosure. It would definitely have to be bigger. And I'm just worried about the market share being there to warrant another pedal, because it would be not double, but almost doubly as expensive as well, because I would be doubling the expensive part of the circuit. And it's a lot. There's a lot to consider there, but I've been surprised how many people.
Because the Red Mountain tremolo is stereo in and out, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
I actually just saw someone in the comment. The place I get my circuits from is shut down. Good to know.
Is that I think Barber even mentioned all pedal yesterday.
Say what?
I think Dave Barber even mentioned all pedal yesterday. He's been was talking about trouble with like enclosures and stuff. Like there's the stuff that's been happening with enclosures and some other comments.
Gotcha. Yeah, I hadn't touched base with him or heard one way or the other, but there you go. Thanks.
Just circling back between questions. So you talked about you have a pretty good inventory of parts together. Do you have a pretty solid inventory of completed pedals as well? So like if people get that creative itch and they want to hit the button, can they get stuff? Are you pretty good on assembled things?
Yeah, I've got so a good number is definitely a subjective term depending on how big your company is, and we are super small, obviously. But I've got 8 Golfs that are completed; they're ready to go. I've got 5 or 6 Red Mountains that are about, if I put another hour into them, they'd all be done. And then I've got anywhere between 8 to 12 of everything else that would be ready to go at a moment's notice.
Jason, how many people are in the chat right now? How many people
About 7, 8. Well, it's hard to tell. My number's not always accurate.
Let's go sell them out.
Right. So, yes, let's do that. So we'll give you some elevator pitches because, we haven't really jumped into why. So if you're new to Swindler Effects, so yeah, he has a Red Mountain pedal. It's a tremolo pedal. So just I'll give, because I love talking about Drew's pedals in front of him to see how I did.
It's like a quiz.
Right. So you have your speed and depth. That would be pretty standard for a tremolo and a level. Then we have subdivisions, so you can change from quarter eighths, dotted eighths, all that stuff. There is 6 different waveforms, or maybe 5 waveforms and 1 stutter effect. But what I really love is when you get down here, and Drew, when I'm done, we'll have to tell you what the toggle switch does. But when you get down here to the buttons, so we have our on and off. And then we have a tap tempo. But then the tap tempo, if you hold it, can also be used as a ramp up, ramp down, depending when you hit it, I guess. I think it bounces back and forth between ramp up and ramp down. Am I right on that? Maybe?
That is one option, yes.
Yes, that's one option. So we'll let him fill in the gaps. And then in the bypass, you can actually, once you get a sound you really like, you can save that sound as a favorite, then change it, so you can go between basically 2 different channels on it too. So you have a pedal with that small of a footprint that can have 2 different sounds saved in it, set up 2 different ways. You can take an expression pedal, you can take an external tap, like if you're using the disaster area clock or something like that to send the tap to it. So there's just a ton of features packed into it, but if you don't want a ton of features, they don't get in the way. It's like you have to sit down and program. There's no LED screen. It's none of that. I mean, you can really simply set it up, save a favorite. The Golf, his chorus pedal, same kind of deal. You have the favorite switch on it. So just trying to give a little bit of a plug here. Like there's more to them than just your standard, here's a tremolo. He's packed a lot of functionality into his pedals.
Yeah, and it's been cool. That's been kind of more and more of a selling point as things have gone on. The fact that at face value, they are just what they are, and you can just use them with the knobs and use them very simply, and it's still a great sounding pedal. Or if you're one of those tweaker guys who wants all those configurations, then they're kind of there waiting on you to use them. And they're still pretty easy to get to without a screen and, menu system and all that. So.
Down in the chat, Brian Landers said that tremolo sounds great. And Brian, I'll tell you, there's a whole backstory with it. We're not going to get into it. We got into the interview and other places with mine, but it does sound great. This right now has been the tremolo of choice for me. And I love it because I have it set up with like kind of a faster subdivision on a harder chop on one of the presets, and then on the other one it's always like kind of your slow, just nice quarter note tremolo, so you can flip back and forth to that. Love it with tap tempo. It's awesome. So checking out the chat, don't see any new questions. So which ones are we missing that we could give them some?
Well, it was funny when we interviewed Drew the first time. He was going through the line and he mentioned the workers' comp, which I started laughing about it and said, "Wow, I might buy that pedal based on the name only." And look what I did. We haven't taken too much of a deep dive into that one yet. We kind of had that one up on the shelf because we had the mighty Leslie series we were working on, and then we have our whole social distancing thing. But I look forward to getting into that. But maybe tell us a little bit about that. I'm going to say something. You tell me when I'm wrong. Drew loves sort of like the tried and true circuits, the tried and true concepts, and then likes to stretch them and figure out what features he can add. How can he make it just a little bit better or do things? So tell us a little bit about the workers' comp, since we have one to hold up and show.
So the workers' comp, it's a slight reimagining of the Ross and Dynacomp type circuits, just kind of your foundational compressor circuits for guitar. But it's the way it's configured. It acts more of like a blend control, which is nice. Like we talked about, not wanting to add the characteristics of compression that you like, but not necessarily wanting to like squash everything.
Right.
So the blend was a real important feature for me, in that I could get compression and get that sustain at longer held out notes, but not lose any picking dynamics on the initial transients. So it was just a nice way to kind of get both. And the workers' comp definitely is one of the more simplistic of our lines. That and probably the overdrive, because they were early on, so they don't have all the like preset switching and all that kind of stuff. But
right,
that the blend control, and then coupled with the bright switch, was a nice feature that I enjoyed, that I always wanted. Sometimes I'll use that to like kind of slightly brighten up humbuckers if I'm going between single coils and humbuckers, or if you're getting more squishy, you feel like you lose that high end chime, you can bring it back in with that switch.
I think we did sort of a unboxing and a quick look of it, right? Because we didn't take a super deep dive, but I think what literally sold me on the idea, aside from the name, which is great, I chuckle every time I hear that, and Brian Landers chimed in, he liked that name as well, was the whole idea of the blend switch and the whole idea of you using compression for just a little bit more sustain, right? Because Jason and I will tell people all day, compressors for us, we're not like chicken pickers and stuff like that, right? Where that's kind of a common thing used, and we like the dynamics in our playing, and Jason likes to use the volume knob and all of that. But the idea of being able to blend that in, and then also maybe have it set more to just get that sustain, I really felt it wasn't as obtrusive as some other, maybe for my purposes, other compression pedals I've used. I really like for the kindergarten, analogy of taking out just a couple knobs. I liked what I heard. I can only imagine if we had time to really kind of take a deeper dive.
Yeah.
So.
And I think I told you the way I run mine is super low. Like I run the blend at like 9 o'clock. Mm-hmm. It's like super low, but yeah, it does what I want it to.
I see Guitar Hack in the chat. He's our friend from
Canada.
Right, from Canada. All right, Silverblade said he has to run, but he's going to sub the channel. We appreciate that. Yeah, if you're new here and you want to hit the subscribe button, that helps. We're pushing really close to that 1,000 subscriber mark, so we're getting kind of excited for that. Something to look forward to. Brian said that he'd like to hear a little bit more about the loop switcher. So, and that's pretty genius because it's small. So I'll let you describe that to when he gets back with the loop switcher. But yeah, Brian, I think you'll like it. And as he's coming back, Dan in New Jersey just popped in. So hey, Dan,
what's up, man?
Yeah. So the loop switcher, which is this guy. Let me try and line it up here.
You make him big, Jason?
Yeah. Thank you.
It came out. So most of our pedals were birthed out of things that I wanted, out of my own rig or pedal board. And all the loopers that I was finding, now quick clarify, in case you don't know, this is a signal routing looper. So this looper controls your signal path. It doesn't record or play back anything. It's not like a phrase looper. that you would be a one-man band with. So all the loopers I was looking at on the market were either really big and complicated or power hungry or just took up a ton of space, or they didn't have any sort of programming capabilities at all. If they were small, they were just very simplistic, I call them kind of dumb loopers. So this was my compromise, because I just wanted a couple of loops, primarily to like run my overdrive pedals into. So I'll have like 3 or 4 overdrives and do all my gain stacking with this. So it's 4 loops, 4 channels, in and out, and then 4 send and returns. You've got a buffer, an input buffer right before the first loop that you can turn on or off. The old version don't have this. This is a new version kind of prototype. It'll have MIDI in and MIDI out. But to keep the form factor as small as possible, we actually use button combination. I'm kind of backwards here, but so to do loop 1, you hit this switch. To do loop 2, you do these 2. Loop 3 is just the middle. Loop 4 is the middle and right. And then this far right one is your preset bank switch. So you've got a live mode where you can control each loop individually. And then you've got 2 banks of presets where you have 4 presets in each bank. So you have 8 presets in total, where once you're in preset mode, you can press a switch and you can program that switch to activate any combination of the loops. So you can have this switch be just one pedal, and then the next preset be like all 4 of them. So if you have like a giant sound change between like a verse and a chorus, or like your chorus and bridge is like a super big change, you can say verse, bridge, or chorus, or wherever you're jumping to. So it's just a way to kind of get programming capability in a small form factor with just a couple pedals, just because I didn't feel like there was really that middle ground. So.
No, that's cool. That's another thing, right? Jason has some switchers he uses. I have not delved into that yet, but kind of tired of doing the little pedal dance, and so I'm kind of waiting for you to. Since I was introduced to your products, that one's sort of been in different versions and in the works. So anxious to get that one done. But
yeah, like I said, so this is a kind of an initial prototype I had manufactured somewhere else where I can do kind of quick testing and verification, and this is the one I haven't verified yet. This is the first one I got from All Pedal. So this will be the production version. I just haven't had a time to actually verify that everything works like it should. Everything here works like it did here is what needs to be checked. So
all right. Well, my buddy Ken Geist and Gear Hound Aficionado has a question there up on the screen. Wants to know what the current draw on the pedals is, in particular the Red Mountain. Any issues using like a daisy chain supply?
It depends. Is the best thing you can answer. Particularly on the version 2s of the pedals, the Red Mountain and the Gulf, the power supply is as carefully designed as I could and separated, so you shouldn't get any extra noise problems. Daisy chain should be okay, but that's always said with the caveats of it depends on what else you have in the chain. Because just because one pedal is okay to be chained doesn't mean when you combine it with a pedal that's not, everything will be fine. So I will forever and always recommend isolated power, just because you'd be amazed at how many problems you can clean up with pure isolated power and quality patch cables. But your mileage may vary. People use them. People use daisy chains and run 18 or whatever pedals off of them, like a crazy amount, and it's perfectly fine with their setup. So there's no one size, one answer fits all, unfortunately. But the Red Mountain and Gulf are both just under 100 milliamps to answer like your direct current question. And so is the reverb, and then the overdrive tremolo or overdrive compressor and delay are more in the 40s, 50-ish range, if I remember correctly.
So a 9-volt, 100 milliamp power supply should run.
All of our pedals will run off of your standard 9-volt, 100 milliamp output. Yeah.
So like a hotspot, theoretically, a hotspot should work with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For sure.
So, kind of in the absence of a question on the chat, I noticed behind you there's an amp, and sometimes people ask about how do you test your pedals and
Yes.
what do you do. So, what would your process be? Some people play something. I've heard other manufacturers use a looper and they use various amps. But tell us about what you got back there.
So this is my main amp for testing and just for personal use. I don't really use an amp out anymore, but it's a Tyler JT14. It's Princeton based, Fender Princeton based circuit. It's a little fatter sounding, a little fuller to me. But I play every pedal through that amp. Sometimes if I have a little more time, I'll actually like play my guitar and fiddle with it a little bit more. But most of the time I've got a ditto looper, a small ditto looper that I've got a recording that I just strummed a couple like open E and A chords, higher and lower. And I just let those strums go through. And then I have two hands to fiddle with knobs to make sure everything's working. I can unplug and replug. And a lifesaver for any nerds out there who care, the Neutrik or Neutrik, however you say it, the Neutrik silent jacks are a lifesaver. The jacks that mute themselves when you unplug them, especially for testing pedals, because I have that going to my amp, and I can leave the amp on. I don't have to switch it off or turn the volume down. I can just unplug, replug, unplug, no popping, no noise. It's great. So
there's your pro tip of the day.
There's your pro tip for testing multiple pedals at a time without having to.
And the nice hand-wired custom-made amp.
Yeah. And then I test everything on my desk over here. I've got a True Tone CS7 power supply. That's what I test everything off of. When I'm designing pedals, I do have a lot of other power supplies that I'll try and test it with to make sure they're okay. Voodoo Labs, PP2 Plus, Walrus, Phoenix, and Atos, Strymon Zuma, and then the CS7. Try and make sure it works with everything. It should, right. But I've got all the heavy hitters mostly, so when I'm developing something, I'll test it on those.
Yeah, you've kind of got the investment in the power supplies, that's for sure, and some of those are not inexpensive.
Yeah, I mean, it's been over years of accumulating over time. Obviously, I didn't go out and be like, I need to get every power supply today.
Right. Yeah. I need both kidneys. I'll parse this out over time.
They mainly came into play as I needed different demo board setups. Like if I was creating a demo board for NAMM or some other reason, then I would get a different supply each time so that I could have it for that demo board, but also have it for testing purposes. So.
Cool.
I really like that Tyler amp. I've been following them over on Instagram ever since we talked. And then there's another person that does some YouTube stuff that has been telling me about the Tyler amps a lot too. And so
yeah, I mean, I
eye on those.
I've got I think they all have it now, but when I bought it, they didn't. This one has the fat switch in the back and the mid control. And I keep the mid control straight up, but the fat switch is always on, just because it the way he described it, and I agree, it's kind of like hitting it a little bit with like a slight clean boost built in, and that it just makes it bigger, and it's just great.
Bigger's better.
Yeah, bigger's always louder is more good.
Heard that before. Yeah,
Yeah.
Unfortunately for me, I played some Tyler amps at 30th Street Guitars in New York City. But it was one of those things where it wasn't a familiar guitar. There were some pedals back there. So I was more interested in just looking at the pedals, and I really probably passed up an opportunity. There were probably 5 or 6 in that little amp room.
Yeah.
But they sounded great. It was just that I didn't get to do the full effect. Because, it's like even when we're on our channel and we're demoing something, we try to go with, guitars that are familiar or something, just so there's not so many elements, but I've only heard great things about those amps. So
it's important. I'm right there with you. You have to have your baseline to know. You can't have too many variables change at the same time, and then you don't know what to attribute it to.
Right. So I'm kind of the one nerding out today, shockingly enough. So on that looper, like because a lot of times when we're doing demos, people are like, what does it sound like with a humbucker? What does it sound like with a single coil? So on that looper, does it matter like what you use to create that track? You're just doesn't make that much of a difference maybe between the two kind of pickups.
Which looper are we talking about? The Ditto?
Like when you're testing the pedals, like when you're demoing your pedals.
When I'm testing pedals, it doesn't matter because when I'm developing circuits and like creating the circuits, I'll try and throw them in every different scenario I can think of. I'll play humbuckers, I'll play single coils, I'll play it on whatever amp I have available, amp simulations, power supplies. I'll try and do the whole thing. But once I know that all those are okay with whatever pedal I design, then when I'm testing multiples down the road, if I know it sounds good with whatever.
Okay.
So the loop on the Ditto right now is recorded with my Jazzmaster, and that's
makes
where
sense.
I'll do it.
Makes sense.
So let me jump in here because I think maybe this is a good point for people to understand. And it kind of goes back to something we heard from even maybe David Barber and stuff. So when we were talking with him months ago, when we did an interview with him, he was talking about how like there's pedal company, there's manufacturers out there, pedal manufacturers out there right now that, you know, are building pedals but don't even know how they go together, right? Like there's a company that's building what you want to drive for your company? Sure, we'll make you a drive, we'll put it, well, you know, they do the whole thing. And he kind of joked where if there's a problem with it and the customer sends it back, they send them a new one because they don't even know what's going on inside.
Yeah, he said unless they scratch the paint, they wouldn't be able to fix it.
Right. Drew, you know, what you're doing over there, I mean, when you said testing the pedals, I mean, you're literally building, I mean, you get some circuit boards and stuff, I think, manufactured, but you're literally kind of putting everything together, the final stage, testing, make sure it works all by hand. Right?
Yeah.
That's farmed out.
And the way things are built now, I don't do a ton of things by hand, but the way things are done and they're outsourced now was just strictly out of necessity. That is not because that's not that I've never done that. Because I used to build them totally from scratch by hand, but I still know what's in every single one of them. You know, they're still the same circuit that I was doing by hand back then. They're just done in a different way, and I'm not doing all the small assembly.
You're putting the final product together, right?
Yes. I take like this is kind of how all the pedals come. Bare circuit board, and I put the final couple pieces on there and drop it in the enclosure, test it here on that bench with that amp, and then I box it up and ship it out. So so it's still very hands-on. It's not like it's not one of those, I'd like to start a pedal company, can you make this for me and ship it out to everybody for me?
Right.
Right. Like your designs.
I saw your I watched that interview, and it's true. He's right. There are people who, and even if you are the one doing it by hand, that still doesn't mean you know what's going on. Because with all the internet resources now, building pedals is like the adult version of Legos. Like it can be if you want to. You can buy kits. You can look at. You can buy blank circuit boards that are DIY projects, and you can source all your own components if you want to get a little more involved. And you know, there are people who buy kits and then see mods that you can do on those kits and be like, hey, here's my product, you know. And everyone starts off that way in some aspect, but it's trying to really know what you're doing and understand what's going on. One, for troubleshooting and repair problems, and two, so that you can actually do something else you want it to do. Yeah, I mean, you can't make it do something new and unique and different if you don't know what it's doing in the first place.
Right.
So did you program? So I take it you have some kind of chip in there that allows you to do like presets and stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah. So I am, by degree, I'm a computer engineer, which is it's like a mix between computer science and electrical engineering. I am not super knowledgeable on the analog circuit side. I know just what I need to for that. But I'm a little more knowledgeable about programming side, about computer programming side of things. So that's where I try and really leverage that knowledge to kind of separate myself from other basement builders, because most of your basement builders are, I say most, are, doing hand built fuzz circuits. Those circuits have like 10 components in them. You know what I mean? So it's like programming is a big barrier that a lot of people struggle getting over. It takes a long time to get familiar with it. It's not something you can just learn in a day. It takes time. So I'm trying to leverage that. So there's a computer chip in there and all of our pedals really, but it's really being utilized in the Red Mountain and the Gulf and the Nexus. And those computer chips are programmed with code that I wrote, straight up. Yeah. So,
Right.
yeah.
So what did Brian said? All right. So this is two parts. Seeing the pedal market is flooded with great pedals. I can't, and also he can't afford to buy as many as he wants. We all know that. That's true of all of us, probably. The person behind them is as much of a factor as the pedal itself. Drew, is there a common theme of how you approach pedal design? I can't afford to take a chance on pedals. I need to know it's good enough to stay on my board. Wow, interesting.
Yeah. So my quick elevator pitch, and I think I probably gave this to you in our interview. The way I do pedal designs is I'm not your guy to come up with new and crazy ideas and wacky sounds, the old blood sounds, the Maris sounds, some of the Empress stuff, new and crazy stuff. That's not me. My goal and my passion, my interest more is to take tried and true, great, objectively agreed upon great sounding circuits and exploiting them and getting as much out of them as you possibly can. So that's where the digital backbone comes into play. Applying a digital platform on top of these tried and true designs to really leverage as much as you can out of them. Like our chorus is based off of CE2. There are some changes and there's some tweaks, but like CE2 is a great chorus pedal. I'm not reinventing the chorus, but the things you can do with the Gulf on top of the CE2 is not accessible elsewhere. And the Red Mountain is the same thing. It's a basic opto-driven chorus or tremolo, but the things that have been piggybacked on top of them is what's important there. So that's my pitch. That's my niche. That's where my focus is.
Mm-hmm.
Methodology.
So starting with going back to the Golf, then starting with that CE2, can you just kind of run through what those changes? Well, because obviously the CE2 had what, 2 knobs on it? Speed
and depth, probably.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
So what do you have going on in that pedal that would kind of?
So bare bones, the couple of, if we're talking about just the CE2 circuit, there are some capacitor changes that make it a little bit fuller. It's a little wider sounding. There's also a kind of a tone control at the end where you can actually brighten it up or darken it up a little bit. That's internal on a trim pot. And then the stereo feature, we daisy chained off of the chorus wet output and did like a phase inversion and created a secondary output that's also wet. A lot of stereo choruses will have one that's a wet output and one that's just a duplicated dry. And when you mix them in, you get chorus, but it's just a dry throughput basically. This one is technically wet on both sides. You have to be careful with phasing in some scenarios, depending on how your setup is. But that's kind of all the tweaks that we did for the chorus itself. Everything else is that control that we piggybacked on top. And that's where your additional knobs come in. Those are all manipulating the code in a way that then interfaces and manipulates the chorus circuit.
So like the divisions, like the subdivisions, what's the delay?
So the delay is increasing because chorus is your dry signal mixed with a slightly delayed version of your dry signal, and they get mixed. The delay knob basically increases that time distance between your wet and dry signal, so it becomes wider. It becomes more warbly, is what the word you would use to describe it. It can get, especially if you start going a little bit faster and you have the delay really high and the depth really high, it gets much more seasick is the other adjective. But
and then you have the tap tempo and the favorite thing. And so this actually is supposed to should have been out on our channel again, because we recorded a clip of it in stereo already, and we were gonna there's one last like Leslie sound video we wanted to do that was kind of alternative ways to get that Leslie sound, and one of them is using a chorus pedal, and we wanted to use this pedal and a couple other chorus pedals to, especially with that expression pedal, you can really kind of work that a little bit. So that's coming up again when the quarantine is over.
Cool. And it's really amazing what all you can really do in code, because the tap switch, the division switch, all those are just manipulating basically the rate knob in different ways. It's just changing the speed. It's just how you change the speed. Mm-hmm. You can do it a lot of different ways, and some of those are very valuable ways. So
yeah. Brian, I'm not sure. I put a question up for Brian, but maybe Drew will get it. I don't get it.
I know what he's saying. Roll Tide all day. Roll Tide. I went to Alabama. That's where I graduated from. Spent 4.5 years there. A little over 4 because I co-opted. I had a co-op job. But yeah, I spent time down there. I am a warranted Alabama fan. There are a lot of people that are bandwagon fans, obviously, and take it or leave it. But Roll Tide all day.
Yeah, you got a piece of paper with a lot of money behind it that says you're authentic.
I paid for it. I paid for that, right? Yeah. I had a pretty good scholarship, actually. I somewhat got paid to go to college, to be honest. But, yeah.
Nice.
Alabama, for sure.
Football scholarship?
It was actually a tennis scholarship.
Oh, nice.
It was not. That was totally a lie.
I was going to say, because when we asked you about your hobbies before, you didn't mention tennis. I was like, wow, look at that guy.
It was purely academic.
Right.
I thought about being in the band. I was in high school band, drumline, but it wasn't time I couldn't devote the time to it with engineering studies. So.
Right.
That's right. So any other questions? And I think I've been trying to tag, or at least say hi to people in the chat. We're not the greatest live stream hosts as far as recognizing, but I did see Ben Rossum pop in, and I think we said hi to Guitar Hack and the Dog Paw. Brody had to run a little bit ago, but trying to keep track of that. Thanks everybody that has joined us. If you're new here, like that whole subscribing thing, we don't normally push that a lot, but the closer we get to 1,000, the more I want to say it, because I just want to see it roll over that. It's a milestone of something. I don't know how much it means, but
I think when we hit 1,000, we retire, right? Because we'll just be loaded.
Well, my wife asked the other day, and I'm like, yeah, we're only like 75 from 1,000. When we get there, we're stopping the channel. And she's, oh yeah, right.
Yeah, talking to Drew kind of reminds me of that too. Everybody's like, we never went into pedal business to make a lot of money. We did it because we like it.
Yeah, for sure. Still got that day job.
That's right.
Yeah.
So any other questions for Drew in the chat? If not, I mean, we are approaching that hour, and we try to be respectful of that. We ask people to come and do it, and sometimes I feel like we could definitely hold them longer and they wouldn't complain. But I like to be honest with people when I tell them an hour.
Yeah. I just want to mention when we were on Drew's website, there's certainly a link to his dealers, which I looked at again to kind of refresh my memory on things. And depending on where you are, you might not be close to them, but you can buy things directly from Drew. You can buy swag. You can buy shirts that, like, if you need some kind of shopping itch and you can't, drop a few hundred on a pedal, go buy a shirt and support our friends who are in this business that we love so much that are trying to figure out a way to make it work. Fortunately, some of the people we're talking to, like Drew, it's small enough that like they can still operate. Like they're already kind of quarantined in the I think I called it the imagination station last time I talked to you. Like he's still there. He can still work on building pedals. So, let's do what we can to support them during this very weird time that we're all in. So even if it's a t-shirt, and they're very nice, they're soft.
Wait, I'll put you on full screen there. Like,
oh well, that's scary. That's you want to end the show. Put me on full screen. It's over now.
PJ modeling that nice Swindler Effects t-shirt.
I'm more of a hand model, but that's fine. Like Ricky Bobby. What do I do with my hands? I don't know.
They are soft.
Yeah, so just go support these guys any way you can during this time, and it's been a great distraction for us. And we've appreciated Drew, and we didn't tell the whole backstory, and it's not really a ploy to go look at other episodes, but go look at other episodes to talk about how we actually forged this bit of a relationship with Drew. And it goes to his character. I'm glad Brian Landreth kind of said, like, a lot of times it'd be great to know the person behind the pedal. And so that's part of the reason we did the interview series, and that's part of the reason we asked Drew to come back on today, because I think if you hear from Drew, his passion about it, his knowledge about it, why he does it, how he does it, I think it makes people more apt to like the product. And the product is stellar. Like, that's the point that Jason has been trying to make this entire video. He was the one that had the tremolo pedal when I met him and kind of went down that journey. So the 3 pedals of his that we have are great. Maybe look forward to that switcher getting done, so I can dip my toe literally into that world. So.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. Brian's 100% right. I don't know if we talked about it or not, but with the market being so flooded, a lot of times people want to support the companies that they feel close to and the companies that they feel like they have a part of or are involved in some way, or you know what I mean? Like companies that will talk to you and relate to you and just be cool with you, Like I try and do my best with like customer service, and I had a guy email, and he's emailed me like 2 nights ago, and he's like, "Hey, this tap switch isn't working. I don't know if something's wrong. Can you call me?" And I called him like 5 minutes later, and he answered the phone. He's like, "Wait, who is this? How do I know you?" It's like, "You just told me to email to call you." He was like, "Whoa, wait, you just called me like that fast?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, I wanted to take care of it." So
it's a point that you made last time. If people email, if they go to your website and they have a question and they email, it comes to your phone, not somebody else.
It's my phone or this computer that you're currently on. So,
right. And I think that happened to me. One of the first times we talked was, I emailed Swindler Effects, and next thing I knew, I was emailing back and forth with you. So, it's very cool.
Yeah. I mean, we got our, professional looking domain name and all that stuff, but it's just for business purposes and whatnot. But it's just me. Yeah. So it is.
And maybe somebody else soon. Is that kind of on hold with the whole COVID-19 thing?
Yeah, everything is up in the air, and it's just on a as time allows basis, So still figuring that out. And then, to see if the demand, how things go, warrants, additional people.
Right. Awesome.
The balancing act.
Right. Well, and I think with that, I mean, what was that?
We're figuring out how to accommodate people. I don't pay myself, so.
Pay yourself in product.
Yeah.
You said you built things that you wanted, so.
I built things I want. Actually, something I've done over quarantine is finally put together a better personal board that's not just slapped together randomness and half-done prototypes that work sort of. So paid myself, I guess, if you want to say that. Yeah,
that's right.
I took some product off the shelves. I was like, it's time. I need to redo this. This is terrible.
Nice.
All right. Somebody, the dog paw is saying he does marketing for demos, prototypes, or returns. I get it. Yes. Well, where are we at? We're at 59 minutes and 52 seconds. So, if you are new to this and you subscribed, we really appreciate that. I saw a couple subscriber notifications popping up, and we do appreciate that. There's more coming. This is conversation. What did I say, Pat? Number 12. Yeah, number 12 of 19. 19 was started with that. I mean, you can figure out where the number 19 came from. And when we came up with the number 19, it was kind of like, well, you know, everybody was talking about we're home for 2 weeks. So I don't know how many of these conversations there will be, but there are more coming. More coming next week. There's some. I know Dave Sestito from DSL Effects is going to be on the show sometime next week, maybe next Friday. And other than that, I'm not really sure exactly what we have going on yet. But there'll be other stuff happening. And so I think that's it. Other than a huge thank you to Drew for hanging out with us again. He's now wasted 2 hours of his life with us. And so we appreciate that.
No, you're good. I love it.
Yeah, he's fun to hang out with.
One
So
other thing I've been doing outside of work is finally doing some long needed spring cleaning. So, you know, I prefer this.
I push mowed most of my yard today just because I felt like I needed to walk for.
I did 5 hours of yard work last Saturday.
Nice.
Right. That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. See you,
Anytime, anytime, guys.
Oh, thank you, man.
Yeah, so I guess that throws it to me down here. And I don't know if I'm center square today. If Hollywood Squares, I'm kind of center square. I like that. But thanks again to Drew for hanging out. Go check out his website. Like I said, buy something, even if it's a T-shirt. Let's get these guys supported during this time. And with that, I'm PJ on behalf of the Beard, reminding you, no matter what you hear, you never have too much gear. Peace out. Wash your hands.
All Drew's links are in the description. That's for you to talk about.